Measuring the success of any business can be really difficult, and it's something that we love to avoid when we're small because we don't think it really matters, but it actually really does. Measuring the success of any business can be very challenging when you're not a giant organization who has really consistent and planned out key progress indicators. And it makes it very difficult to know how you're doing when you're making changes and you don't exactly know what you're doing 6 months from now. So you can't overall look at your whole year and say, well, I'm going to hit this mark and be right on. What most businesses do when they are not massive is actually track the success of smaller things such as launches. Now, if you're doing any live launching in your business, you're going to want to, at the very least, track those launches so you can see if you are hitting the mark, and then you can start to plan out what the next one will look like and the next one. And that's the key to, in the future, being able to track your overall business growth goals. So today I'm going to share with you how I track my launches so that I can see how well they're doing. Now, this is really important to do for two main reasons. One is that if we don't track, we tend to rely on emotions and how we feel about the launch to gauge our success, and we could be misinterpreting the results. We may have had too high expectations or too low expectations or just no expectations and are just going on our feelings about how we showed up and how it felt to actually do the live launch event, or how we felt when reading emails or not getting sales on a day, etc. And that emotional roller coaster is very difficult to ride. And it can actually make us walk away from a launch thinking, never again, that didn't work. And we end up taking what decent results are and throwing them away. And then number two, the problem is we sometimes will doubt the entire program, decide it's not valuable, that nobody likes it, and that we shouldn't be doing it when we actually have a great program. We just haven't learned how to sell it properly, or we end up throwing out the launch and not doing that again, and just throwing out the webinar and deciding to do a challenge, or forgetting about the challenge and starting a brand new workshop, when basically all three of those could work if we just learn to measure them and look at them objectively so that we could make good decisions on how to improve them. So I'm going to share with you behind the scenes and one of my own launches over the last year to share with you how to properly track it. And I'm going to share with you the key progress indicators, the business KPIs that you really need to be looking at in order to see how well you're doing and whether or not what you're doing can work at scale. Okay? Because you're going to be surprised at how much of a numbers game this is. So let's jump in and I'll show you behind the scenes on a recent launch. So this is my handy dandy little spreadsheet that I use to track different types of launch events because they all have different variables in it. But the one I'm going to focus on today is the live webinar that I ran earlier this year. And I'm going to punch in real data so you can see what it actually looks like. But first, what I really want to do is point you to this whole idea of looking at how the spreadsheet really evaluates things. Anything that you see in green is hitting the benchmark of a really successful stage in the funnel. And that means that anything you're doing at this point to optimize is like really small. It's like changing the design on your sales page. It probably means that you've got great copy that you might just need to change up something and add a little more information, or even improving your copy a little bit, or just being more confident in your delivery. Anything in yellow means that you're doing okay, like you're reaching a broad industry benchmark on the converting at this level, at this spot in your funnel, but it does mean that you can work on some big things or some small things to improve it. And really, you shouldn't be working them at all of them at once, because it can be really difficult then to tell what is going to actually have made the difference. You might have changed something that you didn't need to, and you're still missing the thing that really actually does make the difference. So what I mean by this is that you'd be changing all the copy, say, on your sales page at the same time as changing all the emails in your launch sequence. If you do those two major things at once, you might not really know which one it was the one that made the difference, and maybe the other one actually did okay. So you just want to be cautious with this. And then if you're in the red, something really core about that step is not working. And it's usually a messaging mismatch, an audience mismatch, like something's really not hitting the mark. And this is where you need to put in the work. But I'm going to show you what this looks like in real time by going through this live webinar. Okay. So the first thing you look at really is you plug in your registration page. So you've got a landing page probably that you use to invite people to sign up for your live webinar. And you want to look at, well, how many individuals came to that page in that period? And it could be probably like a 2-week period. And you don't want to count every single visitor, because if somebody came 5 times, you don't want to like count them 5 times. You just individuals. So I had a webinar that I had 798 people, either from ads or from my list, hit that landing page. Okay. And my result was I had about 398 people sign up for that webinar. So you can see right here that I've got over 25% conversion rate of that landing page. The webinar was called the 6-Figure Membership Secret, which I'm actually hosting again in a couple weeks, which you can sign up for at scalingdeep.com/live. It's really good. And a lot of behind the scenes stuff there. But, you can see that I'm hitting the mark with this. I know that like the minimum standard in the industry for saying like you want to get at least 20% of the people who come, especially cold traffic, to your landing page to sign up. I think that's really low. I think you can only be that low if you're a really big, broad industry, like your household name. You want to be higher above that to know that you're hitting the mark, because it costs us a lot of money to drive traffic to those pages. It doesn't take much to come up with a really good name for your training and a really cute and short landing page that helps them to take that next step to say, yep, I want to sign up for this training, this webinar. It sounds really interesting. I want it on my radar. All right. So that's work that you can do if it doesn't work out so well. Now, the show up rate is the next step on the journey. And this is also really critical, because when you're doing a live launch, you are not counting the number of sales out of the number of people who sign up. You are counting the number of sales conversion rate to the number who show up or watch, because that's going to be a very smaller amount. And you also, if you're relying on your live training to make a connection with people and properly introduce your offer, you know that they are not going to get that feel of it at all if they didn't bother to show up to the training at all. So you're really just counting the show up rate. Now, I got about 150 people who either showed up or watched the replay. So I also had a very short window for the replay, and I included that in there. I mean, I know that's a little bit hard to tell. Are they unique, or were they also people who got the webinar? But I just came up with a number that wasn't super high for the replays, but I wanted to include that in there because it did make a difference, because I was offering it as a replay. So 150 people either showed up live or watched the replay. And that brings me to a number of about 37%. This is really high. This is a January launch for me. And I find that people really are interested in showing up to these things in January, say more so than July or August, right? Or even June. So I did fairly well with this. So you can tell here that if you have a lower number, like say 100, it's okay. And it's definitely common. It's a little low, though, that you could work on. Well, how can I provide more information or more interesting storytelling in advance of the webinar to get them more excited to show up? Or do I just need to include more day of webinar emails to remind them that it's happening and really encourage them to come live? I mean, you can entice them with so many ways, but it's really, really worth it, right? Because this whole number on sales is being based on this amount right here. So I'm going to plug in my number. So it's actually 150. That was my actual number. And I'm going to write in my number of sales. All right. So in this, I got 7. I just about got 8, but somebody had a minor issue that was technical that prevented them from purchasing. And that gave me almost a 5%, so 4.67% of conversion rate on the number of people who showed up. Now you can see that is in the yellow. It is definitely decent to be getting less than 5% conversion rate. And again, if I didn't have that technical difficulty for that person, I might have had over 5%, which is really, really good. What this means is that my program was pitched well in the webinar. I made a good case for it. People felt comfortable taking a step with me to work with me. And the sales page also really resonated with them. I'm close, but I also know that I want to work on being more confident in my trainings when I'm doing them live. And I'm just not done it very many times to a big audience. And this is just something I need to practice. So that's where I'm putting my focus. So what you can see here is that you really are tracking these details. And when you track these details, you actually go, oh, wow, like I actually did all right, as opposed to looking at that and going, I only had 7 and I only made 10K, and realize that it's a numbers game. And imagine how many people need to show up to get, if I was to get still at, say, around 5%, I would need double these numbers to do that. I would need to have about 1,600 people see the landing page and about 800 people be registered for the webinar in order to get perhaps 300 or less to show up to get 14 to 15 sales. You can see that, right? So when people say to me, no one bought or only one person bought, when I say to them, well, how many people you visited your sales page? And they say, well, 5. I'm like, well, if someone did buy, you would have had a 20% conversion rate, which you can see here is actually off the charts. So I hope this helped you to see that when you are selling one-to-many, it is a bit of a numbers game, and it's not a throw it all out kind of situation. I mean, if you are red in every single category, that yeah, you've got this amount of people sign up and it was less than you wanted, and you had this amount of people show up, which was less than the amount, and you had, very few sales based on the show ups, you've got issues in all those levels. But I think you're going to find that when you actually track this properly, that you're going to have a problem in one of those areas more than the other, which means you just have to work on that. And then you can do it all again with those improvements. And then every time you do it, just adding one more area where you've made some changes, gotten some more training or gotten some more feedback from a coach or advisor, mentor on it, so that you can start to do a little bit better in that and then start to see those numbers eke up. And when you've got the green light in all those areas, you can scale. As long as you're not spending more, say, on ads than you're earning. So for example, if I had done 10K in ads and gotten 10K in the launch, that wouldn't have been that great, right? So you've got to definitely look at those inputs, but you can do it at scale if you've got those green lights. And yes, things do change a little bit over time in the industry, but then you just can work on micro optimizing. And my friend, that is the way that we can really run a light schedule business where we're not constantly hustling, by creating brand new trainings all the time and brand new funnels, because those take a lot of work. Every time you redo a webinar, it takes months. Every time you redo a launch sequence, it takes weeks, or write copy, for a sales page. So you want to be taking what's working, keeping it, and only changing what you need to. All right. So I hope that's helped you really get your head around how to track your launches, how to see how well you're doing, and giving you more confidence to keep doing it over and over again. I love to share this stuff with you, and I want to invite you to my upcoming training, the Six-Figure Membership Secret, because all these kinds of things I put inside those trainings to share with you how to do things on a very light schedule. And that is the secret to getting to six figures with a scalable membership program. And that is coming up soon. So you just have to go over to scalingdeep.com/live and sign up, and you're going to be so glad you did. Thanks for being here. Bye for now.